Two teams overcoming injuries to reach 4-1 set to meet at Raymond James Stadium. That and more on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the San Francisco 49ers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am James Yarcho, the host of Locked On Bucs. He is Eric Crocker at Coach Crocky on Twitter, one of the hosts of Locked On 49ers, and you can catch both of these shows 5 days a week on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Croc, lots to get through here as the Bucs and 49ers meet again. And both of these teams, similar stories here. Both 4-1. Both have dealt with some major injuries to some key players. But as far as the 49ers are concerned, what is the biggest story there in San Francisco heading into this game?
I think right now for the 49ers is a couple of things. One, the 49ers are just 4-1 at this point in the season, especially with all the injuries that they've been dealing with. I mean, Brock Purdy missing multiple games. George Kittle, I think he played a quarter, like literally one quarter of the season of an actual game during the season, and he's been out ever since. There's no Brandon Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall has missed time. Nick Bosa is down for the season, and somehow, some way, there's a plethora more of injuries, but somehow, some way, the 49ers have figured out a way to be 4-1. I think a lot of it is due to the play of Mac Jones, and Mac Jones has done a terrific job, doing what they're asking of him. Not like they're saying, hey, you got to push the ball downfield a whole lot, or you have to be Baker Mayfield, but he's throwing the ball a ton, and he's been fairly efficient for the 49ers, and he has really helped contribute to this 4-1 record that the 49ers have started with. So, and he's actually 3-0 as a starter. So I think those are the two big storylines. Again, how the 49ers have been able to hold up with the amount of injuries to key guys that they've had, and Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones has been super impressive. I've enjoyed watching him play. I was joking on my last episode at Locked On Bucs that I feel like Christian McCaffrey has entered the world of witchcraft, and he's the one sucking the life out of all these other players. Because if you were going to tell me before the season started that the 49ers would be ravaged with injuries on the offensive side of the ball, especially, my first thought would have been, oh, well, McCaffrey was probably the first one to go down, right? That's how it always goes. But he's been outstanding this year. Mac Jones has been really impressive. And I look at both of these teams and think, you know what? When these teams do get healthy, they're going to be even more dangerous. So this game in week 6 could have huge playoff implications with the direction that both of these teams are going. This could decide who's hosting a playoff game when all is said and done. And I'm not going to run through the laundry list of Buccaneers injuries. I've done that. That's been my top story every single week this year. The biggest one on Wednesday was Zion McCollum, who was one of the remaining starting outside corners with Dean and Morrison both out last week. He was spotted on the sideline at Bucs practice with his hand in a cast and his arm in a sling. He hasn't been ruled out for Sunday yet because he went through a procedure on his thumb, but just another injury in the secondary for the Bucs. But I'm going to talk about a little bit of the positive for the biggest story about the Buccaneers heading into this week, and that is the duo of Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka. Baker has now entered the national conversation for NFL MVP with 4 fourth-quarter comebacks this season, and coming off of a game where he threw for 379 and 2 touchdowns while only throwing 4 interceptions. He's top 5 in passing yards, top 5 in touchdowns, top 10 in passer rating, only 1 interception on the year, and he's in the top 10 in rushing yards among quarterbacks, and he's done this without Jalen McMillan all season and without Mike Evans the last couple of games. But his top weapon has been Emeka Egbuka. He's top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards. He's tied for the 3rd most total touchdowns in the league. And to take it even a step further, he's the only rookie in the top 10 in receiving yards, and he has the fewest receptions of any player in the top 10 while having the most yards per reception of anyone in the top 25. Long story short, this kid is special, and he has been absolutely unguardable this season.
Yeah, it's been awesome just watching the ascension of him, man. I mean, the conversation with how well he's been playing and almost looking like a veteran is going back to training camp for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was a lot of rumbling coming out. Like, oh, he can't be that good. And then you watch him play, and it's like, damn, he is that good. So he's been awesome. But the biggest storyline, definitely Baker Mayfield. And I don't think it started this year. I think it started last year. You know, that was the guy, and I talked a lot I used him as an example when talking about the 49ers and being able to overcome injuries. Everyone wanted to make all these different excuses for Brock Purdy. I'm like, well, there's a guy over there playing in Tampa who is dealing with injuries to his receivers, and he's figuring out a way to keep the team afloat and ultimately kind of help lead them to the playoffs. There's always going to be things that these guys are going through. There's always going to be things that potentially could hold a quarterback back, and it's on the QB to figure out how to rise above all of that. And I think that started last season with Baker Mayfield throwing 40-plus touchdowns, and then it's carried over into this season where he's starting off very hot, and watching him really duel it out against Sam Darnold. And it was almost like, okay, who's going to blink first? It ended up being Sam Darnold throwing the interception late. But Baker Mayfield, he's been awesome. And he's one of the guys I feel like when you look at the 49ers, where they're at defensively, a lot of younger guys that they've had to count on, especially with the injuries, not having the pass rush you ideally would like. You look at Baker Mayfield and say, man, that's a guy that's dangerous. So how do you get him uncomfortable? How do you get him to potentially turn the ball over? I think that's probably one of the 49ers kind of pathways to winning this game. But that's going to be very tough because he's playing football at a high level right now.
Yeah, and to touch on the 49ers situation real quick, I know we're early in the week. We haven't even gotten the official practice report on Wednesday for the first practice of the week, but it sounds like George Kittle really is not in play for this game. But any updates, any rumblings about Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Jennings, some of these other guys that are, potentially able to play?
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll definitely know a little bit more by tomorrow, especially like Thursday's practice. Wednesday's practices, as we're recording right now, are typically like the first practice of the week for a lot of these guys. If I had to guess, I think there's a chance we see Pearsall and Juwan Jennings out there. I am not sure about Brock Purdy. It sounds like this is something that's going to kind of linger and carry on a little bit longer. So I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans should expect to see a lot of Mac Jones. And who knows how healthy Mac Jones is? I can't wait to see the injury reports on him today, because that's a guy who over and over and over again had to pick himself off of the turf. He grabbed his knee one time. I'm like, what's going on? It was like he was adjusting the knee brace. He was throwing up on the sideline, like throwing up on himself. So he was really battling through a lot of different things. But he is a warrior. He battled through it, and hopefully he's healthy enough this week, because if not, there's a chance Tampa Bay may see a quarterback by the name of Martinez, who I have not seen take a snap for the 49ers this season.
Yeah, my eyes were glued on Thursday night. I saw Mac Jones go down. It looked like he was grabbing his calf, and I'm like, are you kidding me? This kid is playing so well, and he's in an environment where, almost not quite to the same level, but parallels to Baker Mayfield, right? He's in a situation that he's happy with. He's in a situation where his coaches, his players believe in him. It didn't feel that way in New England. Don't let him go down too when he's playing so well in place of Brock Purdy. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on those injury reports if you're a Bucs fan and you want to know potentially what kind of quarterback matchup you could be looking at. But we're going to take a look at the key matchups that are going to decide this game. That is coming up next on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings that exact same intention to how they craft every single model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you again for joining us here on a crossover Thursday. And let's take a look at some of these matchups, Croc, because there are some interesting ones in this game, especially when we're talking about a lot of key guys that are not going to be playing in this game. But when you're taking a look at the matchup, what's the first one that you're really honing in on?
Oh, the first matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing definitely is just the 49ers defensive line against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line. Again, we've talked about the 49ers D line, the injuries, Nick Bosa not being out there. And you have a lot of young guys like Alfred Collins playing in the interior there. On the outside, you have Michael Williams, and he slides inside for pass rush opportunities there. And then you have Bryce Huff, who's a newcomer coming over, traded from the Philadelphia Eagles. So how those guys match up with Tampa Bay's offensive line? And can the 49ers finally generate more of a pass rush? Because right now it's kind of been non-existent to this point, especially when you lose a guy like Nick Bosa. So that's the key matchup that I'm saying, because if you have a good pass rush, that helps everything. That helps your guys on the back end. That helps your cornerbacks. Again, we've talked about some of the terrific pass catchers that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, and a couple of that are missing. But with the guys they do have, and you have some of these back end guys for the 49ers, Diamador Lenore, and some of these younger guys, it really helps when you have a pass rush. So for the 49ers, they have to continue to try to get better each week. I think that's the first matchup that I'm watching come Sunday.
I feel like it might almost be a blessing in disguise for some 49ers fans that Bosa is not playing in this, because if he was, that Baker Bosa highlight from last year would be on a continuous loop on every football talk show all week long. And I'm sure Niners fans are real sick of seeing that one. They can go back and be like, yeah, but that stiff arm didn't win him the game. The 49ers still got the dub. But man, what a highlight that was last year. But yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers, and numbers only tell part of the story, right? Stats aren't everything. But I was like, man, the 49ers pass rush is not as formidable as it's been in years past. And I'm sure losing Bosa has an effect on that. But, I was looking, Baker might have a little bit of time in the pocket to let some of these plays develop. When I'm taking a look at this game, the first matchup that I'm looking at isn't about players on the field. It's about the chess match. I'm looking at Todd Bowles versus Kyle Shanahan. Bowles has not won against Shanahan since arriving in Tampa, and the Niners have averaged 29 points per game over their 4-game win streak against the Bucs going back to 2019. Now, as we've talked about, they're dealing with injuries, but they've dealt with injuries before against the Buccaneers, and it hasn't seemed to matter. Shanahan has found a way to make sure that this offense is running efficiently and able to put up a ton of points against, one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. So while the mini bye didn't help the Seahawks going into week 5 against the Bucs last week, I would expect that this type of thing is going to help the Niners, especially when they have guys that are so close to being able to return on the field. But Todd Bowles has to find some answers against the 49ers offense, and he's going to have to do it shorthanded with McCollum and Dean and Morrison's statuses all up in the air right now.
Well, fortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 49ers, they're not a team that's prone to just throwing to the outside receivers. So really the matchups for you guys is going to be in the slot, right, against a 49ers slot receiver, against the linebackers. Kyle Shanahan is widely known for putting linebackers and guys at the second level in conflict. So essentially trying to use their coverage rules against them, and a lot of times going off of the play action. Now, the 49ers run game hasn't been as good. So our team's still thinking, hey, first and foremost, we need to stop the run, load up, and then we'll play coverage from there. I think that's typically how 49ers get teams. But right now, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is averaging just over 3 yards per carry on the season. So the 49ers really haven't had much success on the ground. I wonder if teams are going to start saying, you know what, they can't really run the ball. So let's try to make them play into our hands coverage-wise and be able to dictate more of what the 49ers are doing. If you can do that, you may have more success. But definitely that matchup is not going to be the outside guys that you're missing like McCollum. It's going to be how are those safeties playing and how are those linebackers playing? And are they disciplined in their coverage rules?
Yeah, and that's been an issue for the Bucs this season. Levante David is not looking like Levante David of old. Servassier Dennis, while he has gotten better each and every week, he was a liability big time in the first month of the season. Is there another matchup that you're looking at in this game that really interests you in the way that the two sides match up?
Yeah, well, really, Embuka, right? We talked about him and him playing, receiver and how good he's been, early on in the season for the 49ers. Again, you watch some of the young guys that they have, and they got this kid, Upton Stout. He's been targeted a lot. He has given up some catches, but he's also competed at a very high level. Had an interception call back on kind of a ticky-tack call, if you ask a lot of the 49er fans, but he has been impressive just from the standpoint of just how well he's done with challenging receivers at the catch point. So, if you have Emeka play in the slot and you have Upton Stout there, what does that look like? Because I think if I'm Tampa Bay, that may be something that I try and I challenge that young defensive back. Can we get him? And if you can early on, maybe they continue to try to target him. And then what do the 49ers do to really kind of change what they're doing defensively to help the young guy out? But if he can stand up to that test right there, I think the 49ers should fare decent on the back end.
Yeah, we know he doesn't have the name recognition yet to get away with the defensive holds and the pass interferences that Quinyon Mitchell did when the Bucs faced the Eagles. But that's also something the Bucs fans are going to be interested in, because Godwin, while he's back, he's not back. So is this going to be the matchup where Godwin starts to be able to build a little bit of confidence, continue to shake more of the rust off, and start to find his rhythm with Baker Mayfield once again? The last matchup that I'm looking for, and it plays exactly into what you were just saying about the struggles in the run game for the 49ers and Shanahan trying to get linebackers and safeties uncomfortable. I'm looking at how this Bucs defense is going to handle McCaffrey and Tonjes. So McCaffrey, obviously more effective in the passing game than in the running game this season. And the Bucs have struggled with giving up yards to running backs through the air. They gave up 100 to Bijan, over 60 to the Houston running backs, another 50 to the Jets running backs. Saquon Barkley was the Eagles' second leading receiver in week 4. And then on top of that, the Bucs are 23rd in the NFL against the tight end. They're coming off of the game where they allowed AJ Barner to finish with over 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those are the two biggest factors that the Bucs are going to have to neutralize defensively if they're going to stay in this game. It's Tonjes and it's McCaffrey as a receiving back. If they go into this one missing their top 3 outside corners and that defense gets shuffled around again, they're going to struggle just like they did against Seattle, trying to find the right pieces to match up against these offensive weapons in San Francisco.
One other key thing to look at for, as far as matchups go, Vita Vea versus Jake Brendel. Jake Brendel playing center for the 49ers. Vita Vea, we know what he is and what he's been throughout his career. That's a big, strong, athletic guy right there in the middle. And Jake Brendel is a guy who he's kind of hit and miss. He can have some good reps. The next thing you know, you'll see him on the ground for a few reps. So that's a matchup right there where if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to really disrupt things, is Vita Vea being able to win that matchup. And that's definitely a matchup the 49ers are going to have to figure out how can they contain Vita Vea in the middle, whether there's some duo blocks or ace blocks or whatever they have to do. But you got to figure out a way to help Jake Brendel in the middle there.
Yeah, and obviously Vita winning those matchups is going to open things up for Yaya Diaby and Hassan Reddick there on the outside. It's something that the Bucs have struggled with this season, is getting that pass rush off the edges. Vita Vea has been incredible all year long. Not having Kalijah Kancey there hurts him a little bit, but Greg Gaines has played really well in his absence. Logan Hall has stepped up over the course of the last few weeks. So the interior of those lines are definitely going to be something that can make or break this game. All right, Croc, we are going to get into what these teams have to do in order to win the game. That is coming up next on Crossover Thursday. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout, it's really, really frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. I am actually it's not just for sports, everyone. I'm taking my son on a road trip to a concert next week thanks to an unbeatable zone deal that I found right there in the app. We got an unbelievable view at an even better price. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is where I always go to place all my parlays, my prop bets, my game bets for just about every sport. Locked On Bucs listeners, you know I have a group of friends, and we do a 10-leg group parlay every single week to really add some fun to our NFL Sundays. The Bucs and 49ers square off at Raymond James Stadium for a chance to remain among the top teams in the NFC. The Buccaneers are 3-point home favorites with an over-under of 47.5, as one of these teams will leave 5-1 and the other is going to drop to 4-2. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bucs, and this crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. James Yarcho of Locked On Bucs, Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers, and Croc, what do the 49ers need to do to go on this incredibly long road trip, head to Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, and leave as the 5-1 team?
I think it's going to have to be them doing something they haven't done well all season and get after the quarterback. You got to put some pressure on Baker Mayfield back there, because one thing about Baker, he has a lot of self-confidence already. And the more you let him get into his groove and he starts kind of strutting around and he gets that confidence and letting it rip, you will be in trouble if you're the 49ers defense. So how do you stop that, or how do you contain that? Got to move him off of his spot consistently. You got to knock him down. You have to hit him and maybe force him into some throws that he doesn't want to throw, or untimely throws. So for the 49ers, I think that's the number one thing they need to do. If they want to get a victory, you have to figure out a way to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, and Baker's been one of the better quarterbacks in the league over the last couple of years, where when he does get moved off his spot, he can take off and run. He can pick up those first downs with his legs, or his receivers have been really good about the scramble drills. So that's going to be huge for the 49ers, is not only to get him off of his spot, but to make sure that they're not letting somebody get open down the field and letting Baker work his magic. On the flip side, I want the Bucs offense to avoid that pressure. So to me, I think they're going to have to dink and dunk the 49ers to death. Long, extended scoring drives that span 14, 15 plays to not only chew up clock, but that are going to wear the defense out. The Niners, they have a good all-around defense. There aren't many weaknesses in their pass coverage or their run defense. It's been the pass rush that has been kind of the weak link there. So this is going to be a lot of taking what the defense gives you, stringing together, positive plays one after the other. If you find yourself in 3rd and long, a lot of times, like you did against Seattle last week, you're going to end up being in trouble. Short, quick passes, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers to Egbuka, Godwin, Shep, Rashad out of the backfield, Cade Otton, who had a big game against Seattle. You need to kind of adopt that death by 1,000 paper cuts approach.
Yeah, I think one of the things the 49ers need to do is be able to play ahead of the sticks. It's been tough because they haven't been running the ball very well. So everything has kind of been on the quarterbacks, whether it's Brock Purdy or now Mac Jones. And with Mac Jones, he's done a good job. How long will he hold up being able to throw as many times as he has throughout his time starting for the 49ers this season? So I think being able to run, especially on early downs, they have to figure out a way to get that going. I think that's going to be a really big key for the 49ers. Mac Jones, he has done a decent job taking care of the ball. But again, we've seen the other side of this coin as well, where he starts turning the ball over at an alarming rate, throwing pick sixes, things like that. We do not want to see that version of him. If you want to limit those type of things happening, if you're the 49ers, you have to be able to run the ball. And you have to figure out a way to run the ball well early on downs. Christian McCaffrey, Get him going because so far it's been ugly, whether it's been Christian McCaffrey or Brian Robinson. And Brian Robinson has fared a little better than CMC, but man, we have not seen those big runs that we're used to seeing from them.
Yeah, and the Bucs are coming off of the game where they just allowed over 100 rushing yards to an opposing team for the first time in like 14 or 15 games. It has been a really, really long time. And Kenneth Walker, he was able to break off a couple of explosive runs. He had one that was like 33 yards. He had another one that was around 25. So the Niners, to get their run game on track, might be catching the Bucs at the right time because they're coming off of a game where they were not themselves in terms of run defense. But when I take a look at the Bucs defense, and you actually just touched on it, you have to find a way to take the ball away. Mac Jones, again, similar to Baker Mayfield, when those turnovers start, they come in bunches. The Niners are -3 on the season in turnover differential. They've thrown 5 interceptions to go along with 3 lost fumbles. The defense, as makeshift as it may be, in this game, they have to win the turnover battle. And just like they did against the Seahawks, the offense is going to have to capitalize on those takeaways. The defense is not going to look pretty. This is going to be an ugly, disgusting game from a Buccaneers point of view because every game has been that way, but it's all going to come down to 1 or 2 key plays. Does somebody pull off an interception in the fourth quarter? Do you kill a promising drive that the Niners have going by forcing a fumble on a running play? That is what is going to make the difference in this one. So, Croc, I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction. We're way too early in the week for that. I usually give mine on Fridays, but you take a look at the spread, Bucs by 3. You get 3 points for being the home team. So this is basically a pick 'em. I think both of these teams match up really, really well with each other. We've talked about all the parallels. I think Niners fans and Bucs fans could, get together and share a beer over some of the shortcomings that they've had this year. But how do you see this game shaking out? Is this a game that you feel the Niners can cover? Are they going to get an upset? Is this going to be the 5th win in a row for the Niners against the Bucs?
Well, the 49ers have done well, obviously covering the spread in a lot of these games early on. But I'm hoping, and I'm sure that a lot of 49er fans are hoping that they can kind of ride the momentum of beating the Rams on the road. We say on the road because it was in Los Angeles, but they call SoFi Stadium Levi South. It's 90% 49er fans at that game. So this would be a more true road game. You're traveling across the country. It's going to be tough. I think you have to try to take the crowd out of it early on. And the 49ers can do that. Then you can figure out a way to kind of hang around, and maybe do like the Jacksonville Jaguars did to the 49ers and ultimately win that football game. 49ers are going to have to do something like that if they want any chance to beat Tampa Bay. But it's going to be tough. This is a team that I feel like is coming off of a good win, a lot of momentum, quarterback playing well. They even with their injuries, are a healthier team than the 49ers right now. I think it's a tall task for the 49ers to even to definitely win, potentially cover the spread, though.
Yeah, I take a look at this one. The Bucs have had a lot of firsts this year. They snapped a losing streak on primetime. They've snapped a losing streak in their throwback uniforms. Is this when Todd Bowles is finally going to snap the losing streak against Kyle Shanahan? I think they can. I feel like the Bucs, despite their shortcomings with the injuries, I think they still have more offensive weapons that are going to be there if the game is close in the fourth quarter, that they can make a play, that they can string together a drive and get that clutch score that they've been able to do just about every week this season. But it's going to be another one. Bucs fans, just buckle in. You're going to get more gray hairs. You're going to stress out. You're going to have a near heart attack like you have all 5 weeks of the season. But make sure you come back on Friday, both shows, Locked On 49ers, Locked On Bucs. We'll give our final preview of this game. In the meantime, please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Both of these shows here with you 5 days a week, covering your favorite team. You can follow on Twitter. Croc is over there at Coach Crocky. I am at JYarcho_Bucs. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you so much for joining us here on a crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.